episode 3, basically evidence of the Anunnaki, and I'm gonna start off on the PowerPoint where I left off from last week. I was getting ready to go into the solar system. The first couple of episodes were about the ancient war in the Pleiadian star system. People then, because planets were getting destroyed, fleeing from those planets and that region of that sector of the galaxy, and moving on to other areas, other star systems, because of the damage and the debris that was causing havoc in their sector. And so they had to create breakaway civilizations. They became space refugees, literally. We talked about some of them ending up in Orion, Aldebaran, Zeta Reticulus, and Sirius, A, B, and C, and various, and the Dog Star and everything, various different star systems. And then we also talked about the fact that some even crash landed on a planet that orbited a brown dwarf star, which gravitationally was captured by our solar system here. And that is, we know, in the Enuma Elish calls it the planet Nibiru. Nibiru orbits a brown dwarf star, and now modern astronomers have found that star. They have found that solar system, that mini solar system within our Oort cloud, our inner Oort cloud area, and it's now called the inner Oort cloud. And there are 2 solar systems, ours and a secondary one that does exist. And they orbit each other. So we're going to go into that today a little bit. All right. So I appreciate that. Let me make sure this mic is properly attuned here. 1 second. Let me just check the mic check just to make sure. Yes, I am on the LCS. Okay, we're good there. All right. Excellent. All right, guys, please hit the like button no matter where you are. I'm on a lot of platforms today at once. If you can hit the like button wherever you are, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, or wherever you see me right now, please hit the like button. I would really, really appreciate that. Okay, it helps the engagement, and it helps to get more people to watch the video. And also, if you can, please share the video. That will help as well if you can share the video, okay? Now, what you see on the screen here is the Hubble Skybook. Right here, I'm going to go back one. This is the Hubble Skybook. Where I left off last week was the fact that we took the Hubble telescope and we looked at a tiny little dot in the sky, right? Straight out there, just a tiny little area. And what we saw was 2 trillion galaxies in that little pinprick of light. Once we zoomed in with that incredible technology, we were able to distinguish over 2 trillion galaxies, not planets, not suns, galaxies, each holding billions of stars. So we know that the universe is amazingly huge. It may potentially be infinite, not because it's infinite in size at this exact moment, but because wherever consciousness goes, consciousness actually expands our reality, right? So the more you look, the deeper you look, the more you're going to find, the more the edge of the universe just is going to become further and further out. Now, we do know that there is a redshift happening, which means in a redshift, that means that things are moving away from you, right? And we know that by specific calculations in redshift, we can tell that the galaxies are all moving away from a central starting point. And so that gives us an idea of the expansion of the universe itself. And it can also give us an idea of the actual speed in which it is expanding. Now, according to astrophysicists, the universe is actually expanding much faster than it should be expanding based on the amount of matter and mass in the universe itself. And so that leads us to an understanding of dark matter and dark energy that is helping with that expansion, and it's creating the extra force that's needed to create this level of expansion at that speed. And when we say dark, we don't mean dark as in black. Dark means that we just can't see with the human eye and with specific instruments, but we do know that it's there. It is light waves. Dark energy is our light waves. Dark matter is a form of wavelengths that exist with something that's giving it some base mass, maybe like a Higgs boson, is giving something mass there, and that mass is actually creating this expansion. It's pretty interesting stuff. But anyway, so we talked about this yesterday. We ended really here, but now we're going to get into the next part. Right now, we're looking at our solar system, right? And we're looking at where we are right now here, where it says sun, right? And so let me just do a quick check here, by the way, on this video to make sure I'm in the right place and just make sure you guys can see me. Just want to make, yep, okay, looks good. So right here where you see the sun, this little circle and the little dot, that's where we are. We're on the boondocks of the Milky Way galaxy. We're out there, like in this outer region, one of these outer armbands that orbits the supermassive black hole at the center. Okay, and we are in a fairly quiet region, to be honest with you, which is probably why we've been given our moment in the sun at this time, as far as us meaning humans, to develop and grow and everything else without that many calamities. However, it didn't really start off this way. And it's pretty interesting, the story on how we got here. When I'm talking to people about aliens and saying that aliens exist and aliens engaged this planet and did this and did that, a lot of people tend to get very offended by that, believe it or not. They get angry sometimes because they think that I'm taking away the accomplishments of our ancestors, when it's actually not true. What they don't understand is, because they haven't really listened to my work at all, is I'm telling you that our ancestors are not from this planet, is what I'm telling you. They're not little tiny green men with antennas on their head. We look like them and they look like us to a certain extent. A lot of them had much bigger cranial mass than us, but we would recognize them as a bilateral, bipedal, hominid person. The only difference is their stature was much larger than ours, and they appeared to be godlike because they had a lot of knowledge and they had a lot of technology. And so because of that, we deified them and worshiped them. Okay. Now, another thing we have to realize is that even the people on this planet, humans, Homo sapiens sapien, we're not even from here. Matter of fact, the planet itself isn't even from the Milky Way galaxy. Let me explain. Scientists now know we are not from here. This is an official peer-reviewed science report. Imagine the shock of growing up in a loving family with the people you call mom and dad, and then suddenly learning that you are actually adopted. This is the sense of shock that came as scientists announced that the sun, the moon, and our planet and its siblings were not born into the familiar band of stars known as the Milky Way galaxy, but we actually belong to a strange formation with the unfamiliar name of the Sagittarius dwarf galaxy. Not the Sagittarius constellation, the Sagittarius dwarf galaxy. All history books have already been rewritten. All astrophysics books have already been rewritten. This is now new peer-reviewed science that's actually being taught at university. This is not a mystery. It's not a conspiracy. This is now science fact. Using volumes of data from the 2-micron all-sky survey and 2-mass infrared, which is my favorite mode to look at the sky in, a major project to survey the sky in infrared light led by the University of Massachusetts, the astronomers are answering questions that have baffled scientists for decades and proving that our own Milky Way is consuming one of its neighbors in a dramatic display of ongoing galactic cannibalism. In other words, we are merging with another galaxy and have been for a very, very long time. The study, published in the Astrophysical Journal, that I told you was published, is the first to map the full extent of the Sagittarius galaxy and show in visually vivid detail how its debris wraps around and passes through our Milky Way. And Sagittarius is 10,000 times smaller in mass than the Milky Way, so it's getting stretched out, torn apart, and gobbled up by the bigger Milky Way galaxy. When you look up at the night sky and you see that swath of, if you have no light, no light pollution, you look up at the sky, you see that big swath of stars going across, and you say, oh, that's the Milky Way. Well, scientists found out that that's not the Milky Way. This is new information. That is actually the Sagittarius being merged into the Milky Way. It's where it wraps around, and I'll show you right here. This is what you're looking at when you look up at the night sky with no light pollution, where these red stars are across here. Okay. Let me see if I can make this more full screen for you too. Where these red stars are, this is where you're looking up at the actual Sagittarius. And what you're finding is where it merges with the Milky Way and how the Milky Way is actually absorbing this Sagittarius dwarf galaxy and merging. Now, where you see this yellow dot right here, this yellow dot, this is where the Sagittarius merges with the Milky Way. And it's the exact point in which where our solar system was dropped into place from Sagittarius. We now know that our entire solar system is alien to the Milky Way galaxy, making every single one of us and every planet, sun, and moon in this solar system an alien to this galaxy. We came from another place. That's what alien means. So who are the aliens? We all are. We actually all are from Sagittarius. Okay. And this merger is still in the process of happening, and it will continue on for a few more 100 billion years. And then the Milky Way galaxy will be merged completely with this, and all these additional stars and planets will be added to the Milky Way galaxy. But we originated from Sagittarius. This is information that the majority of people on this planet don't even know exists, because that's how new this information is. Okay. This is an example of a merger between galaxies. This animation depicts the collision between our Milky Way galaxy and the Andromeda galaxy. Hubble Space Telescope observations indicate that the two galaxies, pulled together by their mutual gravity, will crash together in about 4 billion years from now. Around 6 billion years from now, the two galaxies will merge to form a single galaxy. This video shows the Triangulum galaxy, which will join in the collision and perhaps later merge with the Andromeda Milky Way pair. Courtesy of NASA, the European Space Agency, and F. Summers. And you can see the billions of years building up in the lower right corner. We're at 5 billion years, how these galaxies are merging. So we're getting very close here in the merger. Soon, the Milky Way and Andromeda will be one complete galaxy. And the view from Earth will look very, very different in a few billion years, which you're going to see here in a second. Turn this down soon. So you can see here, billions of years from now, the Milky Way will collide with the Andromedan galaxy. So you're looking at what we now call Milkomeda. Okay. This is what it's going to look like. And ironically, we're going to need a merger like this because our sun is going to run out of fuel. Our sun is middle-aged. Our sun only has about 5 billion years left. So by the time this merger fully happens in 7 billion years, our sun will be a white dwarf. And so that hence the need for breakaway civilizations, hence the need why advanced civilizations look for other planets to move to, because suns don't live forever. A lot of suns that can help harbor life within the solar system, they only have a limited amount of fuel, usually 10 to 20 billion years, and that's about it. Okay. All right. Now, what's interesting here is there is a writing called the Epic of Atrahasis. And the Epic of Atrahasis is a very, very important epic. It's a Sumerian cuneiform writing. It's in tablet format. You can get it. You can see it if you want to see it in person, you can actually see it at the British Museum. Okay. And you can also get a copy of it on Amazon. You can buy the translation of it. You can also, and it was translated by George Smith many, many years ago in 1800s. This is not any work of any modern author. These translations are very old, very, very old. And you can also CLI cuneiform online digital library, and you can take one of these stones and you can drop the virtual stones into a virtual translator, and you can read them right online for free as well. So there's many ways to get access to the information and knowledge in these in these tablets. There's no excuse for anybody to say that they don't know what's in there. No, we know what's in these tablets. It's well known. And I documented in my first couple of episodes that Zachariah Sitchin is a phenomenal researcher and a great man. They lied about him. They said that he was the only person who translated these tablets. That's an absolute lie. Whoever said that, you can tell right away. They never read a tablet in their life, and they never researched the tablets. The tablets were translated long before Zachariah Sitchin was even born. All he did was use existing translations, and he left the sources for all his work in his books. Every few paragraphs, he left the source of where he came up with the concept and the theory for that part of the book. So he left his breadcrumb trail right there. But people don't read, people don't study. And as soon as one person pops up with something negative to say, millions of people run behind that person as if it's the gospel, unfortunately. And so the Epic of Atrahasis is information that's been well documented and well known for a very, very long time. Long before me, Zachariah Sitchin, Gerald Clark, anybody, Matthew LaCroix, long before we even thought of, this stuff was translated. I just want to get that out there for the skeptics. It talks about the Apsu being the oldest of beings and their progenitor. It talks about Tiamat, who he is, and what will become Earth. It talks about Mumu, the sun steward of his house. Marduk is Nibiru, planet of heaven. And it talks about Marduk a lot. Marduk is also known as Amun-Ra. That's who that is. That's Amun-Ra in the Egyptian Book of the Dead. Marduk and Amun-Ra, same person. He's made it into the Bible. He's made it into the Torah. He's made it into the Jewish American Library and so many other texts. So does Enlil and Enki, and they're all in there. I mean, people didn't even know that Enki and Enlil were in the Bible. They had no idea. The Anunnaki are in the Bible. They're called the Anak. So these beings are well known and well documented. They, of course, the Bible would have them because they copied everything from the Sumerian tablets. Marduk is used to represent a planet called Heaven, and this is in the creation story of our solar system, because he was given power by the leadership of the gods. And so it's a pretty interesting story. What he did was the initial copy of this story was in the Enuma Elish, and the oldest version. And in that version, Nibiru was a planet in there that had moons, and those moons had crashed into a planet in our solar system that we know as Tiamat, which we now know as the asteroid belt, because the asteroid belt is an exploded planet. There was a planetary collision millions of years ago, and that collision created the asteroid belt. A huge chunk of that planet Tiamat, which had water-bearing and land, water-bearing planet with land on it. It broke away with all that organic material and life, and it recoalesced in the position we are now as Earth. Earth is a chunk of another planet, which is now, the remains of it are now the asteroid belt. That's where Earth came from. And our moon was tugged along. It was the moon of Tiamat, and it was gravitationally pulled along into this position. The moon, to me, was in some way much later potentially artificially put into a geostationary orbit, synchronous orbit, where we can only see one side of the moon at any given time by the way that it rotates. And then also, I personally believe, based off of ground penetrating radar evidence that we have from Arecibo, that the moon itself has been mined, and there's something on the inside of the actual moon, some type of a structure. Whether it's ancient or not, I don't know, but I can tell you that anyone can get these images from usgs.gov and take a look at the ground penetrating radar, and it doesn't take a genius to figure out there's something beneath the surface. That's why it rang like a bell when they crashed a lander into it years ago. All right. So the Atrahasis epic, this is the tablet here. It has a version of the flood story. It talks about the Anunnaki coming from another planet. It also has a very interesting story because it also it also is talking about the fact that there were people living on Mars. They were called the Ijiji, according to these tablets. And these Ijiji were like this working class Anunnaki. Anunnaki just means people that come from heaven to earth. It doesn't mean any particular race. It's a generalized term. Just like if I was to leave Earth and go to another planet and they say, "Where you from?" I would say I'm from Earth. I'm an Earthling. But I mean, that's just the overall umbrella. Underneath that, then I can go into right. I can go into the I'm an Earthling from this continent, North American continent. Then I can go from North American continent. I can say, well, I'm from this country in the North American continent, and I'm from this actual state. And then I can go down to city. I can even go down to, the street and my home address. And then I can even go down to what race I am and what gender. So there's a breakdown there. But Anunnaki is a general umbrella term for people coming from heaven to earth, from space to a planet. These Ajiji were up there on Mars. And in Genesis, there's an account of them as well. These are the angels, because they were also known as the angels. They fell from heaven to earth. They went from Mars to earth to go to battle against God, just like it says in the Bible. Anu was the god of or the leader of these Anunnaki pantheon. And his son Enki and his other son Enlil were here on Earth. And when the Ijiji realized they had all three of those guys in one location at the same time, and they wanted to go to war against them, and the reason why they wanted to go to war, because they got tired of doing all the work and the labor. They were being treated as slaves, and they weren't slaves. They worked and labored for 250,000 years. They didn't have any human workers. That didn't exist yet. It was just them doing hard labor. So they said, okay, this is it, man. We're done. We're going to go to war. They decided to go to war. So they fell from Mars to Earth. They fell from heaven to Earth to go to war. And they basically rebelled against God. That's the whole story, right? They went against Anu, Enki, and Enlil in the Sumerian tablets, which is where the story came from. And what they did this at a place called Adam's Calendar in South Africa, which exists and now has been designated as the oldest discovered gold mine, which is exactly what they were doing there, mining gold. The gold mine dates back to 200,000 years ago. Again, all the alignments are happening through geology and modern sciences linking the ancient tablets and again, more circumstantial evidence, right? So just really good stuff. And so in the Atrahasis epic, they decided to go to war. Enki says, man, we got to figure something out. We're outnumbered here. And these people they're really trying to do this to us. So he says, I have an idea. There is an existing hominid on this planet. And so what we can do is we can add our essence to them. That means genetically do some tinkering. And we can get them to do the labor. We can get them to do the work. There was an actual suggestion about using artificial beings, because they had a couple of these artificial beings working at the medical facility. But you see, the Anunnaki, they were smart. They realized they must have had something bad happen in the past, because they were like, then they would outnumber us, and why would they need us? So they even realized how AI and artificial technology and robots in a mass amount, not a good thing. They knew this, not a good thing. They said, no, we're going to take this biological creature and we're going to play with it. And we're going to make this thing here do the work, something that we can control. And so that's what they did. So they genetically modified the existing hominid on this planet. They initially, first of what they did was they took a couple of the hominids on the planet and they started trying to clone them. That was our cousins. They weren't Homo sapiens sapien, but they were our cousins. And I think that they were probably smarter than us, not technologically, but spiritually. They were more connected to nature. They had bigger brains and bigger skulls. We know this for a fact already because we found the bones. They probably had bigger pineal glands. They probably could use telepathy and things like that. They had more DNA connected, because now we have disconnected DNA all of a sudden. So I think that what they're calling junk DNA used to be connected in our ancestors. But they started trying to clone them at first. The cloning would work, but they couldn't get the clones to reproduce. Just like if you take, two cloned animals and try to mate them, they can't reproduce. Or you take a lion and a tiger, you create a ligan, right? But the ligand can't reproduce. Same thing was happening. So they had a conundrum here. They had a big thing because they needed more speed of production of these beings to do this work, or they were going to end up going to war again, right? So Isis said, "You know what? I have an idea. I'm tired of doing this. I'm gonna take one of these babies to term." So they took a female, they took the egg out, and then they took some of the Anunnaki sperm and other genetic material, and they mixed it together. This is what we call making a zygote in modern science. This is what we do right now in IVF. We do this. We create a zygote. And so she took that modified egg and inserted it into her womb. And then she went a term of 10 months, according to the tablets, and gave birth to the first baby. And she called it the Adamu, Adamu. And that translates from Sumerian into first man. That's what that means, first man, the Adamu. And there's a famous cylinder scroll of her holding up this, the baby, the Adamu, in her hands. And she says, "My hands have made it." And that was the birth of Adam, that we know in the biblical text as Adam. He was the Adamu, the first man. He wasn't the first person on earth. There were already millions of people here long before Adam got here. When they say first man, they're talking about the first genetically perfected version of Homo sapiens sapien that should be able to now reproduce and help them build their worker army. And so they started mating him with these clones at Eden, the Garden of Eden, Edin, where Satan was the person in charge. That was Enlil's other name, Satan. So Satan, the Lord of Eden, oversaw all the operations there, and that was located in Mesopotamia, which is now modern-day Iraq. That's where the cradle of civilization is. Okay, and he was mating with clones, but they weren't able to reproduce. So they said, "Okay, we gotta do something else." They took some of his bone marrow. This is where the whole story about the rib comes from. They didn't take the rib out. They took some bone marrow. They took some DNA from him. They created Eve. They made him and Eve, and they saw, okay, now we're making some progress here. Now this worked. And the Garden of Eden, you would find that they had specific times that they would mate. It was like stalls, almost like horse stalls, and they had guards. And you would find that the man that they were, that they were now Homo sapiens sapien, they would bring them out to mate with women only at specific times. This place was a giant laboratory, if you will, an outdoor laboratory with guards there to make sure people were mating at specific times. It was a breeding farm. Okay. It was a breeding farm, and you would get in trouble if you were mating outside of the time you were supposed to mate and all this other crazy stuff. It's wild. This is what they were doing. So it's pretty interesting stuff. This is all in the Atrahasis epic, right? This is why I dig into these ancient tablets, because the information in these tablets is so key to understanding what really happened in the ancient past. Because you got people running around talking about Adam and Eve were the first two people, and then from Adam and Eve, we got everybody on the planet. Now, you know darn good and well, if you have sex with your sister or your brother, and then that baby come out, and that baby has sex with that baby, and there's no way you're going to get enough genetic material to create a civilization of 8 billion people. You know good and well it ain't going to work. That's why you're not supposed to have mate with your sister and your cousin and your brother and all that, right? Because there's no genetic diversity, which means you're going to end up having deformities, mental illness. You're going to have babies dying. You're going to have all this kind of stuff. It's not going to work out. You're not going to get the 7.8 billion mating the same people over and over again. Millions of people were on the planet at the time. As a matter of fact, when you get to Cain and Abel, when Cain killed Abel, and he was getting kicked out of Eden, and Lil told him, who was also known as Yahweh in the Bible, he tells him, he tells Enlil, he tells him, he says, "Hey, well the people out there are going to kill me if you kick me out of here." Right? What people? Like, and Lil's like, or Yahweh in the Bible, he's like, "Well, when you go out there, don't worry, I'm gonna put a mark on you. I'm gonna brand you so the people know, hey, this is my dude. Don't touch my boy right here. This is my boy. Don't touch him." So he got branded, and he sent them out. All right. And he says, when you get out there, don't worry, you'll find a wife. And he did. He found a wife. And then, he began the Canaanites. Right. But again, the people were already here. I'm talking about a lot of people all over the entire planet. But yeah, that's the whole thing. That's why it's ISIS. And if you read the book of Genesis, which is copied from a lot of the Sumerian tablets and cylinder scrolls, Genesis is the generations of Isis. That's where Genesis comes from. Genesis, generations of Isis, because she's the one that gave birth to the Adamu. Okay. And then we find these wars occurring all throughout. All after they started getting all the people, they started all these wars. War. It was always nonstop battling and fighting. It's interesting because, they came from wars, right? They fled. They created new breakaway civilizations. They found new refuge, new homes. They started off nice, and then all of a sudden, here come the wars again. It's like we just can't get away from these damn wars. So it's something genetically encoded in the DNA. It's in the RNA. It's these epigenetic memories that are just playing out through generation after generation over many eons, right? Because now we go to the Mahabharata and we see more evidence of these ancient wars. And these wars were vicious. Not only were they vicious, but they used some weapons that were really incredible. The Mahabharata is an ancient Indian epic where the main story revolves around two branches of a family of the Pandavas and the Kauravas, who in Kurukshetra, they have a war and battle for the throne of Hastinapura. All right. And these battles are pretty consistent. Now, there are 100,000 verses, more than that actually, in the Mahabharata. I have the whole set up here. It's an amazing set. But you find that these people themselves are also who? They're the Anunnaki. They're the Anunnaki. Excuse me. And they're battling each other. It's fighting an asthma attack from yesterday. And they're battling each other over and over again. And they're using these incredible weapons to do this, to do this battling and do this war. It's pretty crazy. All right. Let's see here. Its longest version consists of over 100,000 schola, or 200,000 individual verse lines. That's how big this thing is. I think. Let me see how big my set up there is. It's 10 volumes, and each volume is about 700 pages. That's how big this volume set is. About 1.8 million words in total. The Mahabharata is roughly 10 times the length of the Iliad and the Odyssey combined, or about 4 times the length of the Ramayana. W.J. Johnson has compared the importance of the Mahabharata to the world civilization, that of the Bible, the works of Shakespeare, the works of Homer, the Greek, and also the Quran. So when people start telling me there's no evidence of these people, there's no where well, we got 1.8 billion words in an amazing volume set that tells you the story of these people and the wars fought on multiple planets and everything else right here on Earth that you have access to. And all it takes for you is to pick up a book and start reading. That's all it takes. It just takes you to. These people weren't sitting around thousands of years ago going, you know what? I think we want to make up a story about blowing up a planet and people fleeing through space trying to find a new place to live. And no, come on, man. That didn't exist back then. People didn't waste time writing 1.8 million words to entertain us in the modern time. This information was vital and important. First of all, just getting ink and paper was hard. I mean, you ever seen how hard it is to make parchment paper? I mean, if you haven't, look it up on YouTube. I've seen parchment made in person. I have real parchment, that I've got in Egypt. They make it when you go to Egypt. Whoever goes to Egypt with me in 2022 in October, you will see the process of folding these reeds over and flattening and all. Listen, ain't nobody. Paper was so important. This particular type of paper, because that's all they had to write on, that only the politicians and the kings had access to it, And if you were a poor person and you got caught with this stuff, you were beat to death. That's how important this stuff was. You had no business even having it in your hands. Okay. So to sit here and tell me that these people just sat around making up sci-fi stories, 10,000 years ago, I don't buy it. I just don't buy it, guys. I'm sorry. Making these Vimanas. This is a drawing of one based off one of the descriptions. But these Vimanas, they worked on something called a ferrofluid vortex engine, rotating mercury engine that's electrified and pressurized to 250,000 atmospheres. They talk about the fact that these Vimanas can fly silently. They can actually also hold a complement of men, and they could take a complement of men to any planet. Who is sitting around making this stuff up? I don't think they're making it up, guys. I think it's real. Not only did they find the information about the Vimanas, we also found the flight plans. The flight plans for the Vimanas, and also the diagram of building them as well. So this is well-known information that you can look up for yourself. It's not secret knowledge. It's not hidden knowledge. It's actually public knowledge. We find, they talk about chariots of fire representing UFOs of one kind or another. These are all in the Bible now. Spoke wheels within wheels, gears of time, the wheel of time or alchemy. And then, a lot of this stuff is talking about snakes or human DNA in the biogenetic experiment set in a physical space and linear time. We're not talking about multidimensionality. We're talking about real people in a real third dimension here. Gods mating with human women to create the human race in their image. These gods were gods with a lowercase g. They were people just like you and me, just with more knowledge, more wisdom, and more technology. And then you have the blue star gods, the blue bloods, or the royal bloodlines descending directly from the gods, which they believe to this very day that they have the right to rule over mankind. The mythical battles of heaven and earth, the physical reality versus higher frequency duality. You have the mythical wars between the gods witnessed and depicted by humans since the beginning of time. These people were real, and the wars were real. They weren't fake wars. They happened. They occurred. And a lot of the times, human beings were involved in the battles. And a lot of these battles made it even into some of the books and texts known as the Bible, which I'll show you here in a minute. We have weapons of mass destruction, planetary destroying weapons. We have the Brahmastra, which is an astra or celestial weapon, a celestial weapon. Think of that word celestial. That is a big term to use. Celestial weapon created by Lord Brahma. A celestial weapon is a space weapon that has the capability of transcending great distances. It's not a planetary weapon. It's not a ballistic missile. They said celestial weapon. It sometimes is known as the Brahmastra, referring to a missile weapon. As described in a number of the Puranas, the Brahmastra is considered to be the very deadliest of weapons. When a Brahmastra is discharged, neither a counterattack nor a defense of any kind can stop it. Think about that. When a Brahmastra is discharged, neither a counterattack nor any defense of any kind can stop it. We're talking about a planetary weapon, a weapon that can destroy planets and most likely is the size of a planet or a moon. Okay? In ancient Sanskrit writings, the Brahmastra was a weapon created by Brahma, along with its more powerful versions like the Brahmashira, the Astra, and the Brahmada Astra. The Brahmastra and Brahmashirastra are said to be the mystical equivalent of the modern day atomic weapons, nuclear and thermonuclear bombs, respectively. Okay? They had some serious weapons. You look at the Indus Valley in Mohenjo-daro on Earth, you see that the buildings there are turned into glass. You see that there's dead bodies in the street today, right now. This was one of the wars that occurred, one of the pyramid wars that happened. And these weapons were used there, okay? The weapons that were used at this area were called the Brahmashira Astra, and the other one was the Brahmada Astra. Those two weapons were used in this war, and they created temperatures of over 3,000 degrees, which turned the sand and the buildings into glass. It incinerated the people and left them in the street. Still, the bones are still holding hands. What was left, whatever was left on their bones, is so radiated that no animals have ever scavenged the bodies. And they're still laying in the same spots today, holding hands in the street, these dead bodies in the Indus Valley in Mohenjo-Daro. You go to Egypt, if you put your hand deep enough in the sands of Cairo, you'll come up with balls of glass. They used to take those glass balls in ancient times and turn them into scarab as honors to the god, the war of the gods. How do you get sand to turn to glass? 3,000 degrees. How come you think that area turned into a gigantic desert? You think it was like that thousands of years ago? It was plush landscape. It was the Nile. It was palm trees and everything else. And then that last pyramid war turned that whole area into a giant desert. Okay. That's where it came from. It came from the war. It eradicated that entire region with these weapons. And this is what one of the weapons here look like. It looks like the same thing you've seen in the Star Wars movie, right? Here's a good example of what I'm talking about in our solar system. You see the Death Star from Star Wars on the left, and on the right, you see a moon. And if you look at this moon is called Iapetus. And what's interesting about this moon, it's got this 3-mile-high ridge going right around the equator, putting it together like a top and a bottom. And then it's got this octagon on it right here. This perfectly shaped octagon. And it's got another one on the other side. You can barely see from this image here. But what's interesting is it resembles eerily the Death Star from Star Wars. This object, when it was scanned years ago, is thought to be hollow by the space agencies. This is an artificial moonlet that, in my opinion, could be one of these Brahma weapons from ancient times, just sitting there now collecting dust in space. Let's see here. Contrary to popular belief, Albert Einstein did not create the nuclear bomb. Now, was some of his science and physics used in the splitting of the atom? Yes. But not because he was trying to build a nuclear bomb. People were taking pieces of his science and his knowledge and utilizing it for other things. Just like you can take something, a knowledge that I give you, and you can use it for good. And you can also take that same knowledge and use it for evil. It's up to you. The real person behind it is Robert J. Oppenheimer. And he says when they did the first test of the first nuclear weapon, he said, "Now I am become death, destroyer of worlds." Okay. In an interview about the first test of the atomic bomb, first televised in 1965, as part of a documentary called The Decision to Drop the Bomb, Oppenheimer remarked that upon seeing the test, he thought, "Now I'm become death, the destroyer of worlds." He was quoting from the 1944 Pramavanda, and that's basically coming out the Hindu scripture known as the Bhagavad Gita. So he's quoting the Bhagavad Gita in his explosion of this nuclear weapon. Again, adding more credence to the fact that these people, they know exactly what they're doing. They're getting a lot of these weapons, the ideas and the concepts for these weapons, and even the design and how to build them and what they're supposed to accomplish from ancient text. Because it's all in the text. The text, you read these texts, you read them like a doggone physics book. You can put things together. And he's not the first person to do these kind of reconstructions from ancient knowledge. Hitler was one, all right? He built the Hannibal craft from getting down there into Antarctica after going through a lot of ancient texts and tracking down the monks in Tibet, and then getting directed to Antarctica with a combination of ancient knowledge and text and some channeled material, along with these beings that he found, these pre-Adamite people that he found in Antarctica. He was able to build ships that were anti-gravitic, right? And it always goes back to wars. And a lot of these wars even made it into the Bible because the Bible copies a lot of their information from these ancient tablets. The Old Testament is a combination of the Mahabharata, the Bhagavad Gita, the Enuma Elish and the Seven Tablets of Creation, the Atrahasis epic, the Epic of Gilgamesh, the Code of Hammurabi, all these texts made up, and a few more. The Tibetan Book of the Dead is a little bit there. The Egyptian Book of the Dead, some of that as well in the Old Testament. But all these texts are what people over time rewrote, copied from, made little tiny scripture scrolls from them, right? Cylinder scrolls and things like that. And then all of a sudden, somebody even later than that, in 100 AD to 900 AD, decided to start putting these together in the format of a book. And the Council of Nicaea picked what was going to go in, what was going to go out, what was going to stay, what wasn't going to stay. And that's how you got the modern day Bible. It's a hodgepodge of plagiarized content. But the wars from the Anunnaki are evident in there. If you go into the book of Deuteronomy, which is what they never want you to read, they never want you to talk about this in church. Nobody wants to talk about this book of Deuteronomy. They don't want to talk about it. I've tried to talk to people about it. Christians don't want to bring it up. They don't even want to hear it because you know why? It's going to prove my point. And the point is two things. The first thing is in the Bible where you see the word God, singular, that's a mistranslation by accident on purpose. By accident on purpose. They actually accidentally on purpose forgot the S. Everywhere where you see the word God in the Bible, it's supposed to be gods, plural. They decided to take off the S to bring to keep the idea, the concept of monotheism, a one God religion. But you go back into the ancient texts and you translate going backwards. The deeper you go, the more you find out, oh, this is the original translation. Oh, they modified it. Okay, this is what happened here. And you also find out that in the book of Deuteronomy, these are the wars of the gods using human beings as chattel, like the same thing they do today. You see where God tells the people, kill the entire town if one person worships another god. What other god? Or he's talking about his relatives is what he's talking about. These people were so jealous of one another. They all wanted to have dominance and control over the whole planet. They couldn't even just take care of the little area that they were in. They wanted everything. And they were using human beings to do it. Suppose you're here in one of those towns the Lord your God is giving you, that some worthless rabble among you have led their fellow citizens astray by encouraging them to worship foreign gods. In such cases, you must examine the facts carefully. If you find that it is true and can prove that such a detestable act has occurred among you, you must attack the town and completely destroy all of its inhabitants as well as all the livestock. Then you must pile all the plunder in the middle of the street and burn it. Put the entire town to the torch as a burnt offering to the Lord your God. Now tell me, do you really think that's the creator of the universe making this kind of a statement here? Because if you do, man, you might need to go get your head checked, because that is not the creator of a universe. The creator of a universe is not going to go from all the way up top above all the universes and come all the way down in here and say, hey guys, this person might be doing a little something I don't like. Go kill everybody. Doesn't make any sense. It's irrational thinking. It says, it's just too funny to me. Then you must pile the plunder. Keep none of the plunder that has been set apart for destruction. Then the Lord will return his fierce anger and be merciful to you. He will have compassion on you and make you a great nation. So he brainwashes these people into thinking they're going to have this great nation if they listen to him and go kill all these people. They do the same thing today, right? You go to high school, you don't got no money for college. You're like this poor person. You're this poor kid, right? And so what they say is, I don't got no future. Well, I got to go join the military. So you go join the military. And then the military says, hey, you kid, I'm going to send you halfway around the world. I want you to take this $5 million weapon and blow up this guy and his whole family that's riding his camel with this $50 tent. And so you go ahead and you press that button and you blow them people up. And you go, hey, I'm a good guy, really. I just wanted to go to college. In your mind, you rationalize the murder you committed because you're thinking, hey, I'm just following orders. I'm not really a bad person. You see what I'm saying? They did the same thing to these people. They're doing the same thing today. It hasn't changed. It hasn't changed. And this is why understanding the past is important. This is why knowing what the hell happened is important. because they're pulling the same stunt on you right now. And you telling people, oh, thank you for your service. Oh, thank you for your service and all this other kind of stuff. Meanwhile, these people are killing people halfway around the world for no reason. They don't even know these people. And this is why since 2001 till today, 27 to 30 military people commit suicide every single day. We're over 300,000 suicides now, veterans, not live military, active military, veterans. Over 300,000 veterans are out of here, commit suicide. You know why? Oh, they realized what happened. They realized what they did. They somebody with a $5,000 suit sent them around the world to kill people so that they can get richer. And when they got back here, they didn't get any benefit out of it. They got no benefit. Matter of fact, most of these people are homeless, broke, poor. Their credits are all screwed up. I know people in the military right now. All of them got bad credit. All of them struggling. They're living from paycheck to paycheck. They get transferred from base to base, so they'll go buy a car knowing that they can't afford the car, but they know when they get transferred to their next base, the government has to pay the car off. So that's how they all have nice cars. They don't have any money for no nice cars. You see? It's a pimp game. But they're doing this because in their mind, oh, I'm just following orders. It's okay, but I'm living like I'm getting the free rent. I'm getting the barrack. I got my medical. I got this nice car. You know. Meanwhile, you're following orders of henchmen for a living, and the same thing was happening back then. Didn't change. But if you don't understand what's going on here, then you just go sign up for the military right away, thinking it's all good, not realizing you're getting ready to get used like a pawn. The Lord your God will be merciful on you. Obey him and keep all the commandments I'm giving you today, doing what is pleasing to him. That's Deuteronomy. Crazy stuff. Here goes some more. Let me show you this one. Kill men, kill women, kill children. Then I heard the Lord say unto the other men, this is God speaking again. Now you tell me if this is somebody that you would respect as a creator of a universe. Then I heard the Lord say to the other men, follow him through the city and kill everyone whose forehead is not marked. Show no mercy, have no pity, kill them all, old and young, girls and women, and little children. Do not touch anyone with the mark. Begin your task right here at the temple. So they began by killing the 70 leaders. Defile the temple, the Lord commanded. Fill its courtyards with the bodies of those you kill. Go. So they went through the city and did as they were told. Ezekiel 9, 5-7. Okay, you see what I'm saying? This is garbage, man. This is what the Lord of hosts has to say. I will punish what Amalek did to Israel when he barred his way as he was coming up from Egypt. Go now, attack Amalek and deal with him and all that he has under the ban. Do not spare him, but kill men, women, children, and infants, oxen and sheep, camels and asses. People follow this psychopathic person that they're calling their God. This is what they're following. They're following a stone cold killer. What I found in the Bible, along with these ancient tablets and texts, it's always the God that's ordering all the murder. So if you go and do a tally on who's been killed in the Bible, who ordered all the killing, the person that ordered all the killing is not Satan. Okay. It ain't the devil that you think. It's this God that's doing all the murdering and the killing. Pretty interesting. That's why I believe that there's a God, but not the one inside these religious books. Then the Lord said to Joshua, do not be afraid or discouraged. Take the entire army and attack Ai, for I have given you the king of Ai, his people, his city, his land. You will destroy them as you destroyed Jericho and its king. But this time you may keep the captured goods and the cattle for yourselves. Set an ambush behind the city so that Joshua and the army of Israel set out to attack Ai. Joshua chose 30,000 fighting men and sent them out at night with these orders. Hide and ambush and close behind the city and be ready for action. When our main army attacks, the men of Ai will come out to fight as they did before, and we will run away with them, and we will let them chase us until they have left the city, for they will say the Israelites are running away from us as they did before. Then you will jump from your ambush and take possession of the city, for the Lord your God will give it to you. Set the city on fire, as the Lord has commanded. You have your orders. You see this foolishness? This is garbage. These are Sumerian and these are Anunnaki people fighting each other that is spread from Mesopotamia throughout the entire region. But not only that, it went even global, because no matter where you read these stories from, it's always the same thing. These gods are commanding their people to go fight another god's people to kill them and take the spoils of war. And then they get more land, they get more kingship, they get more dominance over other areas of land. It's a way of acquiring more, building your empire. That's what it is. Okay. This is a good example of what I was talking about. Hey, don't blame me, kid. Those politicians in Washington sent me here. I'm a good guy, really, right? You see this kid here? I mean, this is what happens. This guy, he goes and he listens to his God, which is the military guy, right? Because trust me, they put that military guy above the real God. And then they go and they follow up, but they follow through with that order, man. They don't miss. But in their mind, they try to justify it. Oh man, I'm just following orders. I'm not a bad person. Oh yeah, you are. Yes, you are. Don't lie to yourself, man. You screwed up. So, where were we at 9 o'clock? We're going to go next week into Uruk. Yeah, we're gonna go. Yeah, okay. I'm gonna stop here. I'm gonna go 2 more slides, and then I'm gonna stop and answer some questions before I go. So Uruk, and then I'll proceed after, because I want to show you something. So here we have Uruk, which is a old establishment, still kind of standing here. This area is one of the areas of evidence of one of the first wars and blasts, one of the first areas of kingship on the planet Earth. You can find it also in the Sumerian kings list, which I'll be covering next time. And what's interesting is this place is tied to a lot of wars. Here's a cylinder scroll that depicts one of these beings dropping what looks like a bomb, and you can see the explosion, and you can see the arrows pushing out in different directions, depicting force. Okay, pretty interesting. And this is Mohenjo-Daro, the massacre. You can see the bodies are still laying out in the street today, right now. And you can see that if you go there with a Geiger counter, you'll find that these bodies are still irradiated at a higher level than background radiation. And no animals have scavenged any of the body parts, because the animals don't want to eat radiation. These are the wars of the gods happening on Earth. Here goes a dead body, almost kind of infused into the staircase at Mohenjo-Daro. And so Mohenjo-Daro is in the Harappa in Pakistan, and it gave the first clue to the existence of more than 4,000 years of civilization, long time ago. And these cities demonstrated an exceptional level of civic planning and amenities. They were on the same level as some of the Atlantean, I guess, not civilizations, but cities. Like the one that I saw in, I went to Santorini, then I went from Santorini, I went down to Akrotiri, and there was this ancient Atlantean city there that got buried by volcanic ash, and it had everything that this place had. It had an actual aqueduct. It had they had flushing toilets. They had a whole plumbing system in the house and throughout the entire city. They had running water. It was just an incredible thing to see. The structure, the way the buildings were built, they even had rebar inside the concrete. It was incredible. This is like advanced structures. And this place, Mohenjo-Daro, it had all the signs of a highly technological civilization. But what's left of it now is, buildings that have turned into glass and dead bodies. The wars of the gods. More evidence of these Anunnaki on Earth. These are some battling, warring people that had wars millions of years ago, forced them to flee from where they originated from, forced them to become breakaway civilizations. And then when they found their new homes and created their new civilizations, what happened? They brought the wars back again. And what the problem with that is they taught us how to fight in these wars. If you read the book of Enoch, which I'll go over one day, in Enoch, you see that the fallen angels, which are really these people, they came down and taught us how to make weapons and how to fight. Okay. Um, and according to Enoch, these people came from space to Earth. And not only that, they took him into space when he described the shape and the color of the planet from space. And yes, he said it was a sphere. He said it was round, a ball. But what's amazing is that these teachings of how to fight and how to make war and following these deadly orders without question, we see that how it's been ingrained into our DNA till this very day. And all you got to do is look around the planet and look at all the wars. You see, there appears to be no heavy Anunnaki presence, although we don't know it. They could be running from behind the scene, ruling from behind the scenes. But overall, we get into enough fight problems on our own. We fight each other on our own without them. We don't even need them to keep the wars going. We're ready to fight in a heartbeat because wars generate income. And so that's the problem that we're facing. But until we get the youth to study and understand how we've been manipulated, what they've done to us, how they've done it, and why we're fighting each other, we'll continue to have people growing up thinking it's okay to join militaries to go kill people on the other side of the planet based off of the order of somebody who's never going to get into a fight themselves. You know, never gonna get into a fight themselves. Now, you want to stop wars? I have the solution. All you have to do is say, okay, Mr. President, okay, Mr. Emperor or King or whatever you are, you guys want to go to war? This is the rules now. In order for us to go to war, you have to be on the front line, and so does your oldest kids. You guys, y'all lead the fight on the front line, hand-to-hand combat battle. You must face off with the other side's emperor or king or queen or whoever you got, whoever you're angry with. You guys go hand-to-hand battle first on the front line, and then we come behind you. I guarantee you there won't be another war on this planet. There'll be very few wars left after if that became a global mandate, right? What do? They use the poor and the ignorant to go out and do their fighting for them. They sit back in the $3,000 suit and all the silk robes and everything else and the crowns, and they get you. They pimp you into doing their dirty work, and you willingly do it for the crumbs that they toss at you. They throw you crumbs and you do it without question, without asking. Just boom, it's done. And then after they get done with you, they toss you away. You're useless waste to them. You mean nothing to them. And it's the same thing in the ancient past. Nothing has changed. This is why we have to understand what they've been doing. You got to wake up and say, wait a minute, they've been doing this stuff for how many millions of years? How many thousands of years? We can't continue on this path. We'll never get to a golden age. And that's the importance of the information that I'm trying to bring to you guys.
Start the video out. The first thing I want you guys to understand is who are who are these people that created us? Were human beings actually created? And the answer is yes. Human beings were created. Okay. Human beings were an experiment. Okay. We were an experiment that a bunch of higher entities got together and they wanted to they had an idea, right? And and I'm not going to say they all got together because some of them were kind of forced to give up their DNA and and intermix it with ours, and we're going to get into that in this video. Now, before I start the video, this video is not for anybody to make anybody believe. I have to tell you guys, like I told, like the great Dr. Blair said, don't come to me for truth. Come to me for information. You find the truth for yourself. So just because Brother Yusef said it, don't make it truth. You decide what the truth is. This is Brother Yusef's truth. What I'm telling y'all is what I believe is true. Okay? I don't even say what I believe is what I know is true. And if you guys choose not to believe it, then it's okay. All right? Because I'm pretty sure some people may disagree, but it's okay. We're going to get into it. So I got this information by way of channel, by way of being in the astral world, actually talking to different races, different people, different entities in the astral world, having conversations, talking to them. And also some of this information comes from my spiritual father directly. Okay. Some answers he gives me, some answers he makes me look for myself. He's like, you have the capability to find the answer for yourself. Go find it. So this is a mixture and a compiling of all those things together. All right. So to start the video out once again, you know, I want you guys to understand that human beings were actually you know, we were created as almost like a thing where they wanted, I don't want to call it a test, but they wanted to see what would happen if they put entities with our mixture down here on the physical plane, right? And notice I didn't say physical world, I said physical plane, because I want you guys to understand the earth was first created itself was on the fourth dimension, right? And I'm talking about the real fourth dimension. And what happened was, at the vibration fell by way of the demiurge, as the vibration fell, we became more physical. So the first human beings on the planet, if you have their DNA, your DNA is literally, you're not a third dimensional being. You're a fourth dimensional being. You're actually more than that because of the makeup that you are. But you're a fourth dimensional being. You're created on that plane of existence, and you fell down. Okay, you fell down. So we are all the fallen ones, right? We all fell. So, or our ancestors did, right? And we are a futuristic version of them. So, you know, there were, and some of the stories going to line up with the Bible, because the Bible actually took some of the stories from the, you know, Enuma-Elish and, you know, the Sumerian tablets, and a lot of information that Zachariah Sitchin. If you guys want to study more of this information, definitely go study Zachariah Sitchin's work. Dr. York did a lot of good work on this. Dr. York, Zachariah Sitchin. It's a lot of people out there that write about the Anunnaki, which is what I'm getting ready to talk about. Yes, it's true. We were created by the Anunnaki, or the first humans were, at least. So when they created us, human beings, without a shadow of a doubt, was first created to be slaves, right? And you know, the god Enki, you know, which is not his real name, but that's what we call him. We call him Enki. You know, Enki actually created the first humans, okay? Now, what I want you guys to understand is that there are different types of humans that were created, right? All come from the same makeup, but they were all created. Some of them were created in different ways, okay? So Enki had an idea to create humans, right? Without his father, Anu. Anu was the supreme god of the Sumerians. Without his father's permission, he decided to go off on his own and create humans, right? And once you do something like that in the universe, you create a whole nother species. You are responsible for that group of people or those entities. You are not responsible. You are now responsible for those people. Enki who was a scientist, he saw fit to help his race by creating another race, and keeping them on a certain level and only letting them evolve by way of the information that he gave them, and by allowing them to evolve by way of you know, his orders, right? So we were supposed to be a race that was controlled directly by Lord Enki. And for those who don't know about who Lord Enki is, I'm gonna break it down a little bit of the story about who him and his brother was, which I'm gonna get into a little later in Lil, right? And this is information I got from extraterrestrials themselves, also my higher self, different entities in the astral world, right? And this is my version of it put together, compiled. So there's a group of entities called the Anunnaki. The Anunnaki are entities who influence stretches all the way down to this third dimension, okay? Whose influence stretches all the way down to this third dimension. So, and I'm trying my best to not get too advanced. So if I keep pausing, I'm trying to find a way to explain this to you guys, for you guys to understand. You know, that's what you guys love about my channel. I explain things so you guys can understand it. That's what I'm trying to do here. I'm trying to find a way to say things so you guys can understand it. So, with that being said, you know, when you look at with that being said, so the Anunnaki is a very powerful race that's very ancient, and they deem themselves to be gods, but they're actually very advanced scientists, extraterrestrial groups that are from another dimension, okay? And what Inky did, you know, because he was known as one of the greatest scientists of their people. He wanted to help his people evolve to a higher dimension because they couldn't get to the overworld, right? The Anunnakis are actually stuck on the higher heavens, right? They're stuck in the seventh and eighth dimensional, and they're, like I said, their influence stretches all the way down to the third dimension. So what happens is, Inky, whose father is Anu and his people got into a huge fight, right? They took over a lot of territory in different dimensions and universes. And one of the people they encountered who was almost as powerful as them, but not as powerful, was the Draconians, right? Who, now the Draconians have a lineage that stretches back to the Draco energy or the dragon energy, right? So they're very powerful. Like we talked about dragons, right? So their lineage literally stretches back to dragons, right? The Anunnaki's energy stretches back to some of the Omni Lords or Overlords, and also some of the you know, it's funny because you find a lot of these terms in comic books, right? So somebody in comic books actually know what they were talking about, but their energy stretches back to the gods, right, and the elder gods. So both energies are divine meaning godly, or very powerful primordial energy. Both of their essences come from primordial energy. So they fought, you know, they you know, the two people fought and the Anunnaki won. Okay. So just so the Anunnaki didn't fully destroy the Draconians, they made a truce. And what they did was they said, look, I'm going to give you my daughter, the king of the Draconians, or the queen of the Draconians, because they deal more with the feminine, the females running everything. The queen of the Draconians said, look, I'll give you my best daughter as your wife. And, you know, let's end this. Let's bring a portion of our people together. So Anu accepted it. He has a Draconian wife, and they have a child named Enki, right? Enki is half Draconian, half Anunnaki, and he created us, right? His brother Enlil is full-blooded Anunnaki. So there's always been a bumping of heads between the two brothers, and there's more of the family, but these are the two most famous characters. There's always been a bumping of the heads between the two brothers because Enlil feels more like, you know, he should have got the throne because he's full-blooded Anunnaki, but the firstborn, which is Enki, ended up getting the throne because even though he's half Draconian. So, you know, Enlil always felt some kind of way about that, right? So if you pay attention to the story, it also goes into Ishmael and Isaac, right? Even though Ishmael was the firstborn, you see what I'm saying? And then Isaac, for those who know the story. It sounds a lot like that story. So Enki was very intelligent and, you know, one of the best scientists of his people. So he created humans. Now, one thing I always tell people that, you know, if you look at your skin, right, your skin, it has scales on it, right? Your skin is very scaly, right? It literally has skin like a reptile, okay? You have a reptilian brain. You have all these different aspects of you that is very reptile-like, right? And what happens is Enki took some of his own personal DNA and the DNA of the conquered tribes, the other tribal extraterrestrial groups that they basically controlled, right? And they weren't a savage group that controlled people with a hammer, but they let people do what they want to do. But they wanted people to know, hey, we the OGs. Like we you know, when we come around, we want respect. That's kind of how the Anunnaki work it. So they wasn't going over just, you know, controlling people, doing all that stuff, but they owned certain aspects of certain people's culture, extraterrestrial culture. So what they did was they took some of the DNA that they already have from other groups, and they also mixed it with us. This is why you, as a child, as a baby in your mother's womb, you can breathe underwater, and you go through different stages where you actually are more female. For the first, I think it's the first 5 months or something like that, you're a female, and then if you're going to turn into a boy, you turn into a boy in your mother's stomach, and you're born into a sack of water, right, which is nothing but an egg. The womb is actually an egg that's inside of the woman, and you breathe inside of this fluid, right? And you swim, and you actually look like a tadpole the first few weeks of the pregnancy, you know, and you're swimming around like a tadpole in your mother's stomach. So once again, back to the reptilian DNA, right? And you also, in certain stages of the pregnancy, you have a tail, right? So, and then you lose that, and then your feet grow, and your hands grow, and you breathing under this fluid once again, like a fish. And, so you have I'm not going to name all the groups, but some of the DNA aspects you have in you are the Greys, the reptilians, and the Anunnaki. The Anunnaki genes being the most dominant, the Anunnaki and the reptilians, because their DNA is the most dominant. So you have over 20 groups of extraterrestrials actually, your DNA is actually made up of. Okay, that's the truth. Now, some groups have a little less. Some groups actually have no Anunnaki blood, right? Excuse me, they have no reptilian blood. And we're going to get into that in a second. So Enki went ahead, he created man in his own image and his own likeness. Sounds familiar, right? And he let them know, I am the only God. There's no other God above me or before me, which wasn't true because he had a father named Anu. But to humans that he created, he seemed like he was the most powerful God. And because we're a young race, he took advantage of that, okay? And he put us to work. We started mining gold, silver, jewelry, all this stuff, and we was giving it back to the Anunnaki, right? Now, we were doing this still on a higher level, a higher dimensional level, fourth dimensional level. So, Enlil found out about what Enki did, and he told his father, right? He told his father. His father was very upset. So, his father didn't rush towards correcting Enki right away. So what Enlil did, he said, I don't like what my brother did, and I don't like what he's doing to these human people down here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to set them free, right? So he got with some of the hierarchy people in the Galactic Council, and Lucifer was actually an aspect of that. Lucifer was actually one of the members of that, right? And it wasn't Lucifer directly, but it was an entity that was an avatar for Lucifer. That's how powerful Lucifer was. Lucifer couldn't even come down directly to the meetings. He had to send his avatar down, or she had to send her avatar down. So this avatar for Lucifer came down and had a lot of influence. It was extremely powerful, and this entity and Enlil actually worked together to help free man. Okay. Some stories say that Enlil hated man, or some stories may even say that Enlil created man. I'm giving you guys the story I was given, okay? So Lucifer and Enlil helped free man from Enki's bondage. And one thing that it did was it showed man that you are more than what your creator is telling you, right? And this goes into the snake in the Garden of Eden, right? So Enki set up this area on the physical plane that was kind of like an Eden. We call it Eden, but he set up this area where he had man, and man mined for him there. And, it wasn't like slavery, but they were still slaves, and man knew they were slaves, but they didn't know anything else. But they had all this potential inside of them. This is one thing that the entities in the cosmos love about humans, is that we're full of all this potential, and we don't even know it. And a lot of the entities just be looking at us like, man, these people only knew who they were and the potential they had, and they don't even know that one day they're supposed to run a universe, right? And we're going to get into that later. So Enki and Enlil, and if this cut off and I do a part 2, then I'll do a part 2. So Enki and Enlil got together, and Enlil and Lucifer, they got together and they gave man knowledge, right? They told him about the tree, what you would call it, tree of life, tree of knowledge of good and evil. They showed man about his kundalini, which Enki didn't want them to know about, right? They showed man about their kundalini and how they can raise their vibration and how they can tap into their spirituality, and told them that they weren't just a servants of God, that you are actually just like him and you have the same powers as him. And because of all the things you're made up of and the essence that you have a real soul, you're actually more than him, right? So Enlil started on a journey of helping man, and Enki was mad about this when he found out what Enlil did. And he was angry at man, but he couldn't destroy him because now his father knew. You know what I'm saying? I knew that man was created, and he couldn't just do away with us. So he kicked us out of the garden, or he kicked us away from the area that he had us, and he said, okay, go off on your own. He was upset. He was like, do whatever. You're going to have to do whatever you want to do without me, right? So what happened was they couldn't destroy. He couldn't destroy man because man, man. Once you create something in the universe, you're responsible for it. So you just can't create this whole new person and then just destroy it. And he was wrong because he wasn't giving us the information that we needed right away. So, but he loved us at the same time. Like Inky loved man, absolutely. But he took advantage of us at first, okay? And to this day, Inky still loves man, right? But at first, Inky was a younger god back then, and he took advantage of us. He took advantage of the situation. Not to say that he was always going to do that, right? But he took advantage of the situation. So Enlil came through and and helped free us to a degree with the help of Lucifer. Okay, Lucifer brought us information. He helped with Enlil. They put other Anunnaki down here to become like Christ messiahs and to help us, to show us things. So they put people in India to become like gurus. They influence men. The Buddha was influenced by the Anunnaki to reach enlightenment by way of working with his Kundalini energy and to show men how to do the same thing. This is why the Buddha said, "Don't worship me," because you can do the same thing I'm doing. On top of that, they put these people all around. So what happened was, Inky left and he came back and he started noticing like, man is getting really smart, because he didn't think that the information his brother gave him men would grow so fast, but he forgot about the potential that we had, So he started to study us more and he found out that, and at this time, man was all together, right? Man was all one mind, one heart. We all believed in the same thing. And what happened was we became so advanced in our information, which Enlil didn't care about. We became so advanced in our information that, what Inky decided to do was come down and separate our language, right? See, he decided to separate man. When he did this, Enlil decided to create his own man also, right? Enlil came down, he said, you know what? I'm going to create my own man, and he's going to be more of an Anunnaki. He's going to have some other traits of other extraterrestrials, but he's going to be more Anunnaki. These people go more into the Dravidians, the people in India, right? Who still are melanated, heavy melanated, but, their features are slightly different, right? Some of them have red hair, black hair. And Enlil took these people and he also helped set up what you call immortal councils around the planet. He set up secret societies and schools and stuff around the planet. And so Inky was very upset because he's like, yo, I created man already. What are you doing? Why are you interfering with what I'm doing down here? So now, as this happens, Anu comes down. Anu sees what's going on between the two brothers, how they're fighting, and he gets upset and says, I'm going to just tear all this shit up. Since y'all want to fight about it, I'm just going to take man out 100%. Inky was upset about that. And Lil was upset about that also. So this is where the Great Flood goes into. Anu was like, just take man out, we're going to go somewhere else and do something else. The earth was flooded, okay? A great flood happened, but a lot of the people on the planet were saved by their gods, which will be Enlil or Inky. So a lot of men were killed off, right? A great flood happened. And from what I was told, the flood was so high, like the biggest, tallest mountain in this world, like would have been submerged in this water. Like everything was flooded. Like the whole earth was flooded. Man was taken out. So Anu thought and Anu left, right? Nubaru got up out of here. As the water went down and everything, what happened was Enlil and Inky started their, they had a lot of people already stashed away. And I'm not going to say Noah's Ark because that's not actually what happened. They didn't go on a boat and sail the 7 seas until the water, till the water fell down. Inky actually took them in the ship, right? Inky actually took them. And then Lil took some of the people into the inner earth, right? So Inky took his people in the ship, up in the ship with him, a certain aspect of them, in their craft, and then Enlil went into the inside of the earth until the water left, right? When everything settled back down, they brought their people back on the earth, and this is where you get into Lemuria and Atlantis starting up. They let their people go back, and they sat back and they watched them to see what they would do with the information they taught them over the years. They built these great civilizations, right? Because remember, their language was already separated, so they had two groups now, different sides of the planet, where they were doing their own thing. So what happened was, man started to grow, man started to advance, and Inky fell more in love with us. Okay, Inky fell more in love with his people. And what happened was, there were an aspect of Inky's group that really hated how advanced we were becoming. They got afraid of us. They were very angry that we were created, and they kept it in the background. But what they decided to do, because Inky had his own group of people and his own tribe of people, and Lil had his own tribe of people that was doing their own thing, all about spirituality and stuff like that. And Lil's people was more about, the earth and using nature, right? So this is and Lil will be known also as the god of Geb in Egypt, right? He's actually is Geb in Egypt, and he was more about the earth, okay? And Inky was more about high level science and in certain aspects of spirituality that had a lot to do with the interstellar, extraterrestrial, out of this world type of information. He was more about teaching his people that type of stuff. And so, because he was also teaching his people a lot of the same things that Enlil was teaching, but Enlil was more about shamanism, earthly, and stuff like that, and using alchemy from that perspective. And Inky was more about high level spirituality and having people's minds out there in the cosmos, alchemy type of stuff. He was more about that, right? So they both were teaching their people spirituality, but it was different schools in different ways. So if you look at it, in Lil, his people will be more connected to people like the Olmec people, on into the Mayans, the people who built the pyramids with the flat top, and they were dealing with astronomy, right? They dealt more with astronomy, and they dealt with that science. And then Inky, his people will be more dealing with the Egyptians, who still merged with nature, but they were more about the Netaru and, saying they were from Sirius. The people were from Sirius, which they did have aspects of their DNA. And Inky's people dealt more with that. They were more out of this world and high level masters all around. Because remember, Inky was a better scientist. He was a little bit more smarter than Enlil, but Enlil was more about the earth and using nature to evolve. Inky was more about using technology and spiritual technology to evolve. Enlil was more about using earthly technology to evolve. And they both are powerful things, right? You can't really say one is better than the other, depending on who's teaching what. So they're both building these societies. I'm skipping a lot of stuff. I'm trying to give y'all the overall idea of what's going on. They both build these societies. And what happened was, like I said, Inky who had a bigger tribe of people on his side, some of his people was angry about man because we were advancing so much. And they were afraid that they were going to have to bow down to us one day, right? They were afraid of that. So they broke away. They broke away from Inky. And some of these are actually his own family members. They broke away. And these people, and they broke away because they were afraid that one day they would have to bow down to us, and they knew the idea of what their father and what the king was trying to do, what Lord Inky was trying to do. So they didn't like that, so they got angry and they decided to be rebels against Inky, right? His own people decided to rebel against him and rebel against him. So they broke away, and Inky allowed them to do that. They said, okay, do what you're going to do, but just, be respectful to me, And Inky sat back, and actually him and Lil had a conversation about this. And they said, you know what? Let's test this out. We got a mad group of people over here. They know they can't kill off our people because we'll destroy them. But let them do what they do, and let's see how this will work. If we give man an adversary, let him do what he want to do with man and make man's life hard. And let's see what's going to happen with men. right? What he would do. They knew the consequences of this because it will pull Earth into a low vibration. They knew it, but they said, let's do it anyway because let's see how man's going to evolve and develop. So as that happened, they went ahead and let that happen, right? And these people became what you are known as the Satanists, okay? The ones that fell, Satan means adversary. I'm always telling y'all this. Satan is not a person with horns in hell walking around messing with people. Satan is a group of people, or the Satanists is a group of people that fell, they're like fallen angels, and they fell, they rebelled against the council and rebelled against their father Enki. So as they did that, they let them come down here, influence man, and man started to do some things they wasn't supposed to do. And as bad as it got, they still, Enki and Lil said, we're going to leave people here and we're going to, go off and do some other things. But we're going to leave people here to let us know what's going on and report back to us what's happening with man. And they left, right? They left. They left people in charge. They let people do. And they let the adversary stay here and do what he do, but he can't kill us off, right? They're not allowed to do that. So they said, we're going to come back and we're going to check on man and have a report to us what's happening. So these satanic groups that we call Satanists, which are extraterrestrials, are actually starting to pull the vibration lower down, dealing with, Enlil's and Enki's people. Enki, Enlil, his people, became the epitome of spirituality, right? Shamanism, spirituality, and he has a lot of influence on the inner earth, right? Enlil, to this day, Enlil, he's literally like the god of the underworld. The inner earth will be considered the underworld to some, but Enlil he literally became like the god, like all the stuff that's going on in the inner earth, all those entities deal with Enlil. They worship Enlil, they have respect for Enlil, and they know exactly who he is, right? And they all the spiritual information and stuff they all come from Enlil. Enlil deals with that, right? All the schools, the secret societies that are all in the inner earth, Enlil deals with all that. Enki, who's the god of the heavens, his people influence more what's happening in the physical world, right? Dealing with how men are developing, how men are growing. And Enki, to this day, he wants to deal with the people that he created, right? He really don't want to deal with Enlil's people. His brother has influence here. He don't want to deal with them. But what's happening is both of their people have mixed in, right? So there's a lot of people on this planet that have mixed in with some of Enlil's people and Enki's people. And now they're looking at it like, well, we kind of don't have a choice except to deal with everybody, right? We have to deal with everybody. So, so what's happening is, as man is constantly tried and tested by these lower level groups. So what is Brother Yusuf really saying here? For some of y'all that really talk about the Illuminati and, these people controlling us, they won't let us go. I'm going to tell y'all a big secret, man. Your own people doing it. Absolutely. Your own people is allowing it to happen to help you evolve. They want to see how you're going to challenge, because every time man is challenged, especially a certain group of people, every time they're challenged, they push forward and create some new shit. Literally out of chaos. And you can see that a lot with African Americans in America. Every time they was put in a harsh environment and chaos, they created some new shit. Right? They took scraps of pork and just horrible types of foods, scrap foods, and made it into a delicacy called soul food. Even though soul food is unhealthy, it's considered a delicacy in the world today. People love soul food, right? And during the crack era, African Americans took and created hip hop out of the blue, right? Out of nothing. So to go even deeper, there's a big eye right now on African Americans in America, so-called African Americans. Notice how African Americans has no identity. We have no identity. We know we come from Africa, but one of the bigger secrets is we don't know that we come from America. Also, we were already here. And we could talk about Asian people, white people, different types of people around the planet, but there's a big, and the government noticed, right? There's a lot of people watching the so-called African American group. That's why the COINTELPRO was created. And the reason why they're watching them is because they know that eventually one of the messiahs will come out. Inky will send a messiah, right? And the messiah will come from that group. They know that these people that the government know this, right? They've been told this. That's why they know it. Like I said, a certain aspect of Inky's people broke away and became Satanists. And they control the world to this day with the help of the Draconians, right? The Draconian people help Enlil's Inky's people control the world. So, and all Draconians are not evil. So what's happening is they know they need to keep an eye on a certain group of people on this planet because they're beloved. They're loved by the gods. And at the same time, they've been chosen and set apart. And it's a reason why they don't have an identity. They've been chosen and set apart because out of their mixture of those people is going to come a Messiah, right? Who's already here, actually. And this Messiah is actually going to come and change the world, right? And they know this. And I'm telling y'all, after 2020, you're going to see things changing. And I'm not telling y'all a day or a date that this Messiah is coming because I really don't know when he's coming. All I know is that the time is close and he's getting ready to appear. It's going to show himself. And at first, you're not going to know who this person was. Shit, it could be a woman. We don't know, right? But at first, you're not going to know who this person is because they're going to be low key. But at the same time, eventually, they're going to come out and they're going to start really influencing people with their voice, showing people stuff, changing the world. The governments are going to have to respect them, and you ain't going to be able to kill this person. They're going to be anointed. So at the end of every cycle, the higher forces always send somebody down, a prophet, a messiah, whatever you want to call it, to help change the world and push the world next to where it needs to go next, right? So far, they've been observing us, they've been watching us, they've been allowing the lower forces to work together to try to bring us down. And there's been wars fought over us, over our souls. And, and the truth of the matter is the higher, more powerful forces won, right? So what I'm telling y'all, the war is already over, right? The war is won, but the thing is, human beings, you just can't snatch our reality away from us. You have to slowly integrate us into something different. That's what's happening right now. So what's happening is there's a truce going on where the dark forces are being allowed to still push certain technology and do certain things until man is totally ready to move forward, but they can't stop us from evolving, right? So they're still trying to keep an eye on us. This is why they're using nanite technology and all this stuff and then putting stuff in the food, but they can't fully kill us off. If they could, they would have did it already. But what they're still trying to do is control us to the point where some of us who don't want to go, we still want to live in the physical world. The gods are like, okay, have them, take them. You don't got to, we don't got to take those people. But the ones that want to evolve and move forward and go to the next dimension, the gods are like, come up higher. Let's go, right? So what Brother Yusef is saying that your physical body was created by extraterrestrial gods who are considered gods, right? Higher level forces. Some of them considered demigods. But your soul, the true you, right? Not your spacesuit, not your physical body. Your soul was created by a higher aspect of your own self. You literally created your soul, a piece of your soul. You took a piece of yourself and put it down into the physical world. So this thing goes up so many different levels on different chains. It would take me days to sit here and talk and complain and explain it totally. I'm trying to give y'all the shortcut, the short story about what's happening and what's going on. So we explained Inky, Enlil, and the quick version of how, your physical body was created and why it was created. Now, on the spiritual aspect of that, your higher self saw opportunity to help your soul evolve even more, right? And to help itself evolve. So it decided to come down here in the physical world and play a game to see if we can merge the physical world and the spiritual world together, right? And one of the secret practices of that is something that actually Enlil taught it first, is consider light body, rainbow body, whatever kind of body you want to talk, go to the higher realms. As this happens, every time this happens, this happened thousands of times since the world has been created. As this happens, the gods and more people see that mankind is really fit and ready to be in the heavens, you know. So as we do this and we grow and we evolve and we wake up, which they're allowing us to do, we're only going to be accepted more by the higher forces. Now, you're not even really considered a planet unless you're like fifth dimensional at least, right? So what am I really saying? In the third dimension, you don't even exist to a lot of these higher forces. You know, it's like you're just a video game on the shelf, right? But at the same time, as you evolve and grow, you become real to them, right? And when they see where you came from and where you're going, you know, now they're like, oh yeah, it's you. You're ready to take what's supposed to be given to you. And what I mean by that is this: mankind eventually is supposed to become the gods of the universe. Absolutely, this whole universe we live in is supposed to evolve, and mankind is supposed to be given this universe, and we're supposed to become the new gods, the ones that choose to evolve. Absolutely. We are all supposed to become the new gods one day, and that's the plan, right? That's the master plan, right? That's what was told to me. I've heard probably only one other teacher say that, but that was also told to me. Human beings are being tested so hard and so much is put on us because we're going to become the new gods of the universe one day, okay?